Hi guys, good evening. I'm audible, guys.
Yes.
Okay. So guys, today is a introduction session for Palo Alto. So we are starting this batch. It's a weekdays batch, and we decided this batch 3 days in a week: Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So after introduction class today, so next class on Tuesday. So Arun sir, over to you. You can start the session now.
Sure, yes, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending upon which part of the world you're from. Let me share my,
Hi.
yeah, hello. So I just got a couple of slides that I would like to share. And then feel free to ask any questions if anyone has. Okay. I'm also looking at and monitoring the chat window. So if you're shy enough, you don't wanna ask that way, then you can put that question in the chat window as well. Okay, so before we start, just a little bit of background about myself. So my name is Arun, just like was introduced. I have close to 15 years of experience, mostly around enterprise security. I've worked in enterprise as well, things like SD-WAN, for example. And then for the past some years, it has primarily been around security. So from security perspective, I've worked on all major vendors and OEMs, for example. Okay, so Palo, Fortinet, Sophos, Checkpoint, Cisco, all the major ones. Okay, and then for some time now, I've also been doing a lot of cloud security as well. Okay, so this was supposed to be. Let me switch to the correct. Okay, so we would be talking and dealing with Palo Alto, primarily next generation firewall. Okay, and we will be dealing with their PAN OS or the Palo Alto Network Operating System. Okay, that's what the session and the training is going to be. It's going to be all about. So this would help you prepare for, in general, Palo Alto. Okay, working through their solution, through their product, and maybe from an interview preparation perspective as well. And also, if you want to do certification. Okay, so previously, Palo used to have their PCNSE certification, PCNSE, PCNSA, those sort of certifications. They have now changed their certifications. Okay, so they are now dealing with, so they kind of revamped their certifications. So what we are going to be dealing with is their next generation firewall certification. Okay, so it will help you design, deploy, configure, all of the day zero kind of a thing, day one, day two, doing your post deployment management, any sort of post deployment configuration, troubleshooting aspect as well. So this is primarily designed, or I would probably work this way up from the foundation and all the way up to some of the more advanced topics as well. We would be talking about and discussing throughout the sessions. So this is geared towards people who are trying to move into security. Okay, people who might not have a lot of security experience and they're trying to deal with a lot of firewalls, especially Palo. So Palo Alto is implemented, it's deployed quite a lot across enterprises, on-prem as well as in the cloud nowadays. Okay, so if you're trying to come from an enterprise background or from any other networking background, trying to jump on the security side of things. So this is typically the first thing that you have to maybe learn or deal with. enterprise firewalls. Okay, and Palo Alto being the more famous name out there, okay, majorly being deployed across enterprises, so it's going to be very, very essential for a lot of those folks. Okay? So beginners, experienced people, all of you are going to gain something out of the content here. Okay, so like I mentioned at the bottom, the job roles that are mostly suited for this training: network security engineer, administrators, even security architects, and if you're on the support side, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, okay, maybe even if you're on the NOC side or the SOC side, right, it's going to be beneficial to understand how the firewall works, how the logging works, okay, how the logs really will come through, architecture from a firewall perspective, all of those good things. So this is a very brief course outline of what the training really is going to cover. Okay, so this does not highlight everything that we are going to discuss and talk to during our session. So it's going to be very hands-on training. Okay, so just a couple of things on the way that I like to do sessions. I mean, I don't use slides. Okay, so this is the only time that you're going to see slides during my sessions. Okay, so I primarily do whiteboarding. Okay, and it's going to be hands-on. Okay,
Some
so
HA, lot of topics missing here. Totally, this is the topics or some more topic will come.
So like I said, this is just a very brief overview of some of the topics that we will be covering. Okay, some of the things like you mentioned, you don't see here is HA. Okay, there's HA. There we will be discussing things with respect to, let's say, Panorama. Okay, we will be discussing things with respect to, let's say, VPNs, remote access VPN, Global Protect. Okay, Active Directory integration, LDAP integration, how to make use of, let's say, the user ID agent, all of those good things. Okay, so the topics that you see here, it's a very it's kind of like a very overview. Okay, it does not comprise everything that we have. Okay, so that's why I mentioned that. That's the first thing that I mentioned, that the topics that you see here plus a lot more that we're going to cover. Okay, so if you're going to look at the from a certification perspective, from a PAN OS perspective, or from a firewall perspective, all of the major topics and concepts we'll be going over. Okay. So we'll be talking about and understanding what really, next generation firewalls are and firewalls in general. We'll be looking at the PAN OS architecture, right? Their SP3 or their single pass parallel processing architecture. Okay. How does it benefit? How it fares against the competitors or different vendors. So if there are people here who are coming from, let's say, Fortinet, or maybe from Cisco side. Okay, so since I have experience with both, a lot of times during these sessions, what I kind of like to do is I will also give you a lot of comparisons. Okay, a lot of comparisons with respect to, let's say, Palo Alto is doing a feature, let's say, for example, URL filtering. Okay, so how does it, or how is it better than the others? Okay, and so it kind of helps you to have that differentiation with respect to the different vendors and the products out there. So we'll be looking at and discussing in very detail about the PAN OS architecture. Obviously, lab is going to be there, and once I'm done with going over some of these things, I will show you the lab environment as well. Okay, so the topology that we will use and the lab. We'll be going over how to do the bootstrapping. Okay, so how do you do the initial configuration, the day zero aspect of the firewall? What are the different aspects that you need to take care? And then anytime we are going through a lot of these topics, I would also bring in a lot of design concepts as well, and then a lot of best practices as well. Okay. So the day zero aspect, doing the initial configuration for the firewall. How do you manage the firewall? Okay, what are the different types of configurations that the firewall saves? How do you manage those? Okay, so what's the difference between, let's say, maybe a candidate configuration, or maybe what's or how does it differ from a snapshot? Okay, within the Palo or within the Pan OS, what's the concept for, let's say, a running config or a startup config? Okay, uh, what's the difference in that with respect to device state when you do configuration exports or imports? How do you do the management with respect to when you're trying to, let's say, replace a firewall? Okay, so we're gonna be talking about all of those in detail. Interface configuration. Okay, within the firewall, there are lots of different types of interfaces or interface types or modes that you can have the interfaces in. Layer 2, layer 3, vWire, for example, TAP. Okay, so what are those different interface types? When you would use one versus the other, and why you should use one versus the other. Okay, what sort of an environments will benefit from those different types of interfaces or modes that you can run that you can have the interfaces in on the firewall. So that's going to be a discussion point as well. Firewall administration. Okay, we're gonna be looking at how do you integrate or how you can integrate the firewall with something like Active Directory, or maybe LDAP, or maybe Radius, for example. Okay, how can you create different administrative accounts or administrator accounts? Okay, how does the firewall manage those? How do when logging in, how you can manage, let's say, something like password policy for admins, lockout policy from admins. Okay, how do you manage those on-prem or sorry, not on-prem, local database accounts versus let's say accounts that you might have in a centralized database? Okay, something like Active Directory. Okay, we will be discussing in in a lot of detail about the zones. Okay, so next generation firewalls, Palo firewalls, they are zone-based firewalls. Okay, so what zone-based firewalls really are? How do they differ from traditional firewalls? Let's say something like if someone has worked on maybe something like Cisco ASA, okay, or maybe if they have worked on router-based firewalls where you implement something like very basic ACL. Okay, so how does that packet filtering, how does that traditional aspect of doing firewall on a router differs from a next generation firewall, right? Plus, how do the zone aspect helps? Okay, so we'll be discussing that. How do you implement that? In addition to that, we will also look at the routing aspect. How does the Palo-alto Firewall does routing, right? The concept of virtual routers, okay, how you can create multiple routing engines within the firewall to segregate routing tables across the across your environment. Okay, so we'll be taking a look at that. Implementing security policies, access policies, whatever you might want to call it. Okay, how can you build policies, recommendations? So we're going to be creating a bunch of different types of policies for different types of environments. Okay, I'm going to give you different best practices. Where does the application detection come in? How you can use that aspect within the security policy. Okay, um, where you should or what sort of a traffic should be permitted technically, what sort of a traffic should be denied, maybe taking a look at understanding how intra-zone traffic works versus inter-zone traffic works. Okay, so how is that differentiation within the security policy? Okay, so within the security policy, you'll be looking at the intra-zone rules, inter-zone rules, and also how do these two differ from universal rules that you can define? Okay, so within so in the Palo Alto Firewall, there are three types of rules that you can define within the policy. So we'll understand that. We'll be implementing the secure policy, and then obviously we'll be taking a look at NAT, network address translation, a very basic concept. Okay, pretty sure a lot of you would have an understanding of NAT. Let's say from a router perspective. On Palo firewalls, NAT is a little different. Okay, it works a little different. So source NAT typically works everywhere the same way, where you translate the source IP address to some sort of a public address, right? Your RFC 1918 private address being translated to a public address so that the user traffic destined to the internet can work absolutely fine. Okay. However, if someone wants to access a resource within the organization, right? Let's say an organization is hosting something like an Apache server or a web server, right? There may be retail or an e-commerce website, okay? And they want to allow internet-based users or users across the world to be able to access those servers sitting in there, maybe in a DMZ environment or maybe from the data center. Okay, so how does destination NAT work, right? So that is a little different of how Palo handles the concept of destination NAT. Okay, so it kind of works hand to hand on how software architecture really works. Okay, so that's why very important that we will spend a good amount of time on the software architecture, understanding how PAN-OS works really, okay? When does the NAT rules come in? When do the access rules come in? Okay, so that kind of will help you to understand the overall architecture, functioning of the firewall, plus it helps you to do or to be able to do the troubleshooting aspect as well. Okay, so NAT rules is going to be another important concept that we will be taking a look at in a lot of detail. Then the main core of the PAN firewall, which are these advanced features, security profiles, okay, things like your application detection or your app ID, URL filtering, wildfire, user ID, TLS decryption, for example, okay, vulnerability protection. So there are lots of ways in which the PAN-OS firewall protects the environment or helps the organizations. Okay, so we understand some of the best practices. We're going to take a look at how do you implement it. We're going to test it. And I'm going to give you some best practices on how you can implement these and also run tests in your own environment when you are implementing these policies in productions. Okay, so we'll be discussing those. TLS decryption, obviously, it's going to be very, very important as well. Okay, especially in today's time, where most of the traffic that we have is web-based. Okay, so we are nowadays doing a lot of hybrid, right? So users are trying to access applications or data within, let's say, within a data center, or maybe they're trying to access it in the cloud, SaaS-based applications. Okay, so a lot of traffic is web-based. Okay, so it's very essential if you want the firewall to be able to very successfully implement some of the advanced features, be able to properly inspect the traffic, to protect the environment, then you would need to give it the ability to do decryption. Okay, so TLS decryption is very important that we will understand. Okay, so multiple ways or multiple different use cases that we have that Palo can help. Plus, nowadays we are also seeing a lot of quick traffic in environments. Okay, and when when we will going over the session, I'll basically go over and explain a bit more detail what quick is, but just as a very high level overview, quick is basically Google's kind of like an experimental protocol. Okay, can't say it's entirely experimental because it has been rolled out for quite a few years now, but I kind of still consider it to be experimental. Okay, so the way that we know and understand HTTP traffic, it has always been TCP. Okay, Google came out with the concept that, hey, we're going to do HTTP, but it's going to use UDP instead. Okay, so that's what quick is. Okay, so Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, they nowadays default to using quick. Okay, so which helps to remedy some of the problems that TCP used to have, right? Things like congestion control, for example. Okay, I mean, not really a problem, but that's how TCP really works, because it's connection oriented, so it needs to do or take care of that congestion control, congestion management, right? It's connection oriented, so it needs to take care of that the packets are being delivered and they are being received. You have the acknowledgement concept, etc., etc. Okay, so Google said that, hey, to speed up the HTTP traffic, we're gonna skip and not use TCP anymore, but we're gonna use UDP because it's connectionless. Okay, so that's quick, and firewalls currently cannot decrypt quick. Okay, I mean, so for now, Cisco can do, Fortinet can do quick decryption. Okay, Palo currently cannot. Okay, so we're gonna understand how you can remedy that problem as well when you're trying to use the PAN OS firewalls. Okay, and then we're going to understand in much more detail of how quick really works or how quick really is. Okay, how you can create policies and how you can protect your environment against quick traffic. Okay, because organizations currently don't like quick for that very reason, because it's fairly new, it's experimental, and then it has its own share of problems as well. All right. And obviously, as we go through a lot of these concepts, a lot of these topics, features, as we are understanding, the monitoring aspect, the reporting aspect, and then the troubleshooting methodologies, it's kind of baked into the whole training. Okay, so I never really like to have a separate section for troubleshooting. I mean, see, no one can teach you troubleshooting. Okay, troubleshooting is just like everything is. It's mostly an art. Okay, so in order for you to troubleshoot something, right, you need to know how that thing works. Okay, so if I know how something works correctly, okay, only then I can troubleshoot it. All right. So as we are going through a lot of these concepts, that's why a lot of my focus is going to be on that software architecture. That second point, to help you understand how the flow of the packets and traffic is through the firewall. Okay, so that you basically have some understanding of where to look and how to look and what to look for if something is not working. And then there are obviously a lot of built-in tools and everything within the PAN firewall through which you can do that monitoring and then troubleshooting aspect as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you a lot of those tools and everything to help you build that troubleshooting aspect. Yes, someone asking something? Okay. Guys, just keep yourselves on mute, please. All right. Okay, so these are some of the topics that I have mentioned here. Okay, and then obviously some which I have not, but that does not mean that we are not going to discuss or cover that. Okay, so for example, a very crucial component is nowadays AI security. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about. I mean, obviously, this training is not really going to be based on AI, so this is not for your AIRS. Okay, so if people here keep themselves current with the development, Palo also does now Prisma AIRS. Okay, which is their AI runtime security. Okay, so we're not going to go into that. We're not going to discuss that. I'll discuss it a little bit just to help you understand of what Palo is doing on the AI side. Okay, from a PAN OS firewall security perspective, I'll still discuss a little bit about AI, okay, or AI security problems and how the firewall can help you do the AI security as well. We're going to discuss a lot about VPNs, both site to site and remote access. Okay, so VPNs is very important. They have always been important. Now, especially with all the hybrid work environment, remote work being kind of like preference, work from home, etc., etc. Okay, VPNs has been very essential. Okay, plus no matter what you are doing, okay, maybe you are trying to do SD-WAN, right? Maybe you try to do you integrate or you try to integrate cloud resources with your environment. There is VPN, there is IPsec everywhere. Okay, and it literally is a vendor agnostic. Okay, so if you understand IPsec, if you understand VPNs on Palo, for example, consider that you understand IPsec and VPN on almost all other products as well. Okay, again, from a conceptual perspective, obviously everyone can do the configuration. Okay, if I give you an administration guide for a product, you'll be able to do the configuration as long as you understand the concept. Okay, so again, the goal is to help you understand the concept. Okay, configuration is kind of like a secondary thing. So we'll be spending time on VPN, especially side to side as well as the remote access. Okay, which is the global protect part. Okay, some of the things you will not be able to do in the lab, and that's not anyone of us at fault with that. That's Palo Alto's restrictive licensing. Okay, so in the lab, we do have evaluation firewalls, which kind of give you 30 days of practice. Okay, and obviously, when we go through the labs, I'll basically go over and talk about how you can keep reusing those. But using that evaluation firewall in the lab, it will help you do, let me just say, almost 80%, 80 to 90% of everything that that is there for you to understand. Okay, there are some things, like I said, which you won't be able to do because of the licensing restrictions. Okay, and obviously firewalls are not licensed in the lab, but I will still show you those. Okay, the configurations, best practices, etc., etc. Okay, so you basically have the understanding, and if you want, you can maybe come back, reference the videos, see how those things are really done. So you can still configure those things, but they're not going to work in the lab. Okay, that's the whole thing is. Okay, for example, things like updates. Okay, they're not going to run in the lab because they need licenses. Global Protect doesn't work. Side-to-side VPNs will work absolutely fine. Okay, there's no restriction on licensing with respect to side-to-side VPN. Remote access VPN, Global Protect, I'll show you how you do the configuration and everything, best practices with respect to how you can implement Global Protect, but you won't be able to do the hands-on for that. Okay. The other aspect for which we would discuss is HA, or high availability, very important. Okay, Palo supports both active-active and active standby. Okay, so we'll discuss that. One of the things which I always get asked during the Palo Alto sessions is upgrade best practices when you do HA or high availability. Okay, high availability is very simple. Okay, there is nothing complicated with respect to Palo firewall high availability. Okay, the problem comes in when you try to do upgrades. Okay, I mean, and not really a problem, but just how the firewalls really handle the upgrade. Okay, and how you have to handle the upgrade when you have high availability. Okay, what you should disable, what you should enable, what you should have, what you should not have, what you should do before the upgrade. Okay, what you should do during the upgrade, and what should you do after the upgrade. Okay, so we'll discuss all of that within the high availability. All right. Another thing which you don't see here is Panorama. Okay, again, Panorama is one, or it is a complete separate product. Okay, it's licensed. All right. So obviously, Panorama, I mean, even I don't have access to Panorama in the lab. Okay. Its licenses are very expensive. Okay. That's why it is mostly production only. Okay. But I'll discuss what Panorama is. Okay. To basically just cover some of the aspects that you can expect with respect to Panorama. Okay. But you won't be able to do the labs for the Panorama at all. All right. Yeah, that is all that that we would be covering in these sessions. So believe me, it's a lot of content, okay, that we will be going over in the next, let's say, 1.5, 2 months time. Okay, that's kind of like the length for the content, okay, and the sessions. So like it was mentioned at the beginning of the session, that we're going to be having 3 days. Okay, so it's going to be weekday. Okay, so 3 days, same time. Okay, and then we aim to basically typically have about 2 to 2.5 hours of sessions. Okay, and 8 to 12 weeks is going to be the duration. All right. Oh, not 8 to 12 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. And again, depending upon, if, sometimes you might not have a class due to something, some reason at my end, etc., that kind of happens. So we kind of will adjust. So that's why I said 8 to 12 weeks, but it typically is 6 to 12, 6 to 8. Okay. So 1.5 to 2 months of time to go over the entire sessions. Okay. So 3 days a week, 2 to 2.5 hours of sessions. All right. Now, having showed you the slide deck, there is, or I want to also show you the
Weekly 3 days only class, huh?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Only weekly 3 days only the class, right?
Yes, weekdays.
What are the days?
It's going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay.
Okay. So let's switch windows here so that I can come over to Palo's website here, their certification website, to show you what the certification portfolio is now. Okay. So there's no more PCNSE, like I mentioned previously. Okay. So it previously used to be PCNSE. So it used to be PCNSA, PCNSE. That's used to be the thing, but that is kind of like legacy. Okay. So in our case, we are going to be dealing with the network security part. Okay. And we are especially going to be dealing with this here, the next generation firewall engineer certification. Okay. This kind of like is the direct replacement for PCNSE. Okay. And you can see it basically validates your knowledge and skills, deploy, and manage your firewalls, basically. Okay. PAN-OS. All right. So through this website, obviously you can get more details about the exam. Okay. It primarily is for next generation firewall product. Okay. You can look at the data sheet for it if you would want to. Okay. So like I said, Palo Alto, they kind of redid their whole certification. Okay. And obviously they increased the cost of the exam as well. Okay. So previously, the exam used to be $150 to $175 typically. Okay. They have now increased that cost as well. So it's $250 for this exam, and it's 90 minutes. Okay. So this is what the exam expects you to know. Okay. Interface zones, high availability. You can see routing, global protect, tunnels. Okay. Management and device-based configuration, software updates, certificates, user ID, using the web proxy, okay, taking a look at some of the different ways in which you can do the, or you can run the firewall. So you can see there is AI here as well, okay? And then some of the other concepts, something like reports, ACC, automation. So, I mean, we're not gonna be going into doing let's say scripts and everything, okay? But we'll still we'll still go over, and I'll still talk about the API, okay, at a very basic level to help you understand the APIs, okay? So you don't need to have a lot of knowledge around API or automation, but they still expect you to have that understanding. Okay. All right. So this is what the current portfolio or the current exam really looks like. Okay. Right. Any questions? Anyone before I move on?
Sir, can we get the notes, sir?
Notes. I mean, notes for today or for the sessions? Hello? Okay, never mind. So this is going to be the lab topology that we would be discussing or talking about or taking a look at. Okay, so this is going to be, let's say, the pods that everyone is going to have access to. Okay, and this is a topology that we will be working through during our sessions. Okay, so you can see we have this firewall here, and we're going to be, so this is kind of replicating or simulating very close to production environment, right? Where you might have the firewall sitting at the internet edge connected to an edge router. And then here you would have your LAN environment, multiple different types of VLANs or subnets you might have, segmentation within your environment, an Active Directory DNS server, or maybe a server farm environment you might have. Okay, how you do the management and everything. Okay, there's a DMZ environment here. You would do the internet access so that you can do a lot of the testing and everything, and then a branch location so that we can do the site-to-site VPN and we can test those things. So again, like I said, a lot of the concept that we have, or I have mentioned there, a lot of those features that we have seen, using this topology, 80 to 85% of those features you would be able to implement. Okay, some of those which I have mentioned, they are the ones that we won't be able to, unfortunately, go. Okay, this is a topology that we will be setting up from scratch. Okay, so I'll help you set up everything from scratch, from having the internet access to setting up the switches, the router. Okay, so we're going to be spending the time there just to help you build that environment. And then obviously, like I said, everyone gets access or has access to this topology, okay, independently. Okay, so whatever changes that you do in your or on your pods or on your racks or in your topology, it does not get reflected to the other pods. Okay, so you have 24/7 access to these racks pods to get the hands-on piece done. Okay. And then also, what I typically like to do is, so once we have sessions and everything start from next week, I will be creating a separate channel, a separate communication channel, okay, just for this group, okay, so that when we're not having a session, maybe during the weekends, maybe even during the week, if anyone has any questions, you are basically stuck at any of the lab tasks or anything, you could probably post that query or question there, and I could respond, and we can have a conversation outside of the training hours or the training days. Okay, so it kind of helps to keep everyone connected. Okay, and I'll basically leave that communication channel open basically forever. Okay, so I don't delete those channels and everything. Okay, so this is what this Palo sessions are gonna look like. They're gonna sound like. Okay, again, starting next week, weekdays, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay, they're gonna be starting at the same time, 2 to 2.5 hours. Okay, for the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's gonna be the goal. Okay, and obviously during the sessions, if there's anything that you would like to discuss from maybe your own production environment, something that you might be implementing or you have implemented, doesn't make sense, okay, you're having a problem with your own production thing or something with respect to Palo Firewall, feel free to discuss. Okay, so I'm always open to discussing any real world issues that you might be facing and you might need, some sort of a help, some sort of a guidance. I could provide that as well.
Sir, you will support for real-time problem because in our
not really.
no, it's just
A full-time support.
we are also,
But yes,
no.
I could help you. Maybe get you in the right direction if you might be having some problems in your
Yes.
real world
In
environment.
our
So,
company also we have a Palo-alto Firewall. So
right.
any doubt, I will ask.
Please feel free to. Yes, absolutely. Okay. And again, if I'm not able to answer at that point in time, I'll probably get back to you and do some research and get back to you and help you out.
Yeah, no issue.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Anyone? So I've been speaking for the last 40 minutes. I'm gonna give myself a couple of minutes of break, and then I'll open up for any questions or anything anyone might have. Regarding the content, sessions, myself, labs, topology, product, please feel free to ask.
Sir, where will we begin?
Yes.
Sir, where will we begin the start, sir?
Regarding the sessions, we're gonna start next week.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said,
please give me the lab details also where we can get the lab access.
The lab access will be provided to you by the team. Okay, so just ask the support team. So I believe you have already enrolled.
Yes.
Right. So reach out to the support team. They should be able to provide you with the lab access. Okay. They would be able to create your account and everything, and you would be able to have the lab access. Okay. If not, then don't worry. When we start on Tuesday next week, we'll sort things out. Okay.
Okay.
What is the class timings? Like I said, it's going to be 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday,
Better we can
9.
start few like 8:30, 8 o'clock, like so. Because if you start 9 o'clock, not 2 hours, 11 o'clock until we'll get too much of time. Better
Yes, so we
we can
kind of
go.
so we kind of aim for that because I mean, during the week there are lots of working professionals who kind of join in as well. Okay. So by 9, everyone is kind of back home. They're kind of, done with their food and everything. So that's why the the timing has been kept that way. Okay. When we'll start the sessions, we'll probably reconvene and we can probably discuss once we have everyone with us, just to, um, we could probably poll among ourselves just to see if everyone is good with 9, or probably they want to start earlier. But for now, we're going to keep it at 9 to 11 or 11:30 IST. Okay. I'll probably not stretch it to 11:30 or maybe beyond to midnight. Okay. So we'll probably keep it between the 2 to 2.5 hours time frame.
Sir, by this session we are going to know about firewall or we are going to break it.
I mean, what do you mean by if you're going to break it? I mean, if from an understanding perspective, yes. Okay, so you understand about firewalls, next generation firewalls, specifically from the perspective of Palo firewalls.
Sir, by knowing this firewall details, information, or understanding this how firewall works, or
Correct.
how
Why,
firewall will
why
be
do you need
broken.
it? How do you design it? Where do you deploy it? How do you deploy it? Okay, those sort of things.
Hi Arun, this is Harmeet. So
Yes.
I have a separate question regarding the job market because this is around more than 30% coverage uh, security firewall by Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
So can you please discuss about little bit about job market?
I mean, is there anything specific you want to discuss?
Yes,
I mean, job market is a very, kind of broad topic.
the
So,
firewall products by Palo Alto,
mhm.
like the course we are doing. So
So like I said, Palo Alto is currently one of the most widely deployed products in the market. Okay.
okay.
So I mean, demand for Palo Alto firewall, and especially Palo certified people, and especially people who have understanding and knowledge about Palo Alto, is there currently. Okay. It has been there in the past, is currently now, and then it's going to be there in the future as well. Okay. Plus, starting with something like Palo, you can then also move into other security products and solutions, or you can also start understanding and getting into the other vendors' firewalls as well. Okay, so you technically would not just be limited to Palo. Okay, so once you understand and work through Palo, you technically will be able to also learn and understand Fortinet, or for example, maybe something like Cisco, because the concepts and everything are very overlapping. Okay, across vendor products. Okay.
Hello, sir. This side Sadab.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, in data centers, companies are deploying different vendors of firewalls.
Right.
In the same data center, they are like deploying Palo Alto, FortiGate, many firewalls. So
Right.
in that scenario, is it like compulsion for us to learn the I mean different vendors firewall, or if we are learning just Palo Alto, it will run for everything.
I mean, it's not compulsory, but it's gonna be a good thing. Okay. Like I said, if you know, or if you kind of learn one firewall, okay, the concepts the concepts are the same. Okay. So just for example, I said TLS decryption or VPN or something like URL filtering. Every firewall does that. And for the most part, every firewall does that in a very similar fashion as well. So if you understand how TLS decryption works, if you understand how VPN works, you can implement it. You can implement it on Palo. You can implement it on Fortinet as well.
And what about the commands? So
So
every vendor
a
has
lot of
different
these,
commands,
a lot
or
of these, a lot of these firewalls, they are mostly managed through a web page. Okay, so gone are the days when you used to configure routers and switches through CLI, and then every vendor used to have different commands and everything. So you have to know that. It's now web page, point and click. Okay, so like I said, once you understand the concepts and topics, it's not very difficult for you to move between products and be able to manage the firewall through a web page. Okay, so you would be surprised when you actually start to, when you have, let's say, gone through Palo, and if I give you, let's say, a Fortinet firewall, you'd be surprised how easy you would find yourself being able to navigate through that firewall's web page. And even though you might not have worked with Fortinet before. Okay, so the transition is very easy once you understand one firewall. Okay.
all right, sir. Thank you. All right, sir. Got it.
Yes, anyone else with any questions?
Hello, Arun. Hi, Sharif this side. If
Yes,
we learn Palo Alto, then we can configure or any terminology, any other vendor like Fortinet and Sophos,
correct. Right.
CISO. It's similar to every configurations like and terminology different, but we can configure if we learn one vendor like Palo Alto or Fortinet.
Correct. So understand it this way.
How different?
But
So
UA
How
is
much
different,
different?
sir.
l-
In Palo Alto compared to than FortiGate. In
sorry.
Palo Alto, everything we need to commit, but FortiGate we do not require to commit. Some policies UA is completely different with Palo Alto.
Like I said, I mean, I'm not saying that,
How much different Palo Alto from Fortinet? It's
Because
very much similar or
FortiGate
it's a
has
very
a
different?
VPN wizards, but we
okay.
don't have a wizards in
So
Palo Alto. Kind of things, lot of
you,
differences there.
okay. So I didn't, so I'm not saying that you kind of won't have to, or you would be able to, one-to-one understand Fortinet as well. There will be some things which are different with Fortinet. For example, the software architecture, how
Yes.
the packet flow happens within the Fortinet is different than Palo. Okay. Something which the other person mentioned, NAT. Okay. There's a difference in how NAT works with Fortinet or Palo. But what NAT really is, how does source NAT work? How does destination NAT work? That remains the same, but the implementation for it is different between Fortinet and Palo. Okay. Another example is, like I said, URL filtering, for example. Okay. Both of them implement URL filtering. Okay. Now, if I ask you what URL filtering is, okay, you should understand what URL filtering is. Okay. It kind of will help you to better, in a better way, understand, okay, URL filtering. When you have implemented on one of the firewalls, it will be very easy for you to then navigate to a different firewall and be able to implement the same thing. Okay. Again, the goal is to understand the concept, the terminologies. Okay. Commands, how does a web page and everything look like? You can do it through an admin guide. Okay. You don't really need to learn commands, web pages, etc. The main thing is to understand the concept. When I say URL filtering, when I say application detection, what really that is. Okay. How does that work? How does a firewall do URL filtering? How does a firewall do application detection? Obviously, both the firewalls will do it differently, but then the concept remains the same. It's very similar to how, let's say, OSPF works. Okay, main important thing is to understand how OSPF works, right? What are the different LSA types? What is an LSDB? How does the neighborship works? Obviously, how Juniper is doing that and how Cisco is doing that is going to be different. Okay, implementation is going to be different as well. But how OSPF really works and functions at a protocol level, at a conceptual level is the same. So if I learn OSPF, I don't really need to worry about whether I'm going to work with Cisco or I'm going to work on a Juniper device. Okay, it's the same concept with respect to the firewalls. Okay, I'm not saying they're one-to-one the same, but when you learn one firewall, you understand the terms, you understand the concept, you understand what next generation firewall is, what different features it implements. And then when I give you a Fortinet firewall, you will be able to correlate the information better. Okay, it will not take you as much time that it took you to learn, let's say, Fortinet, or maybe let's say to learn Palo, and then to be able to learn Fortinet as well. Okay, so if you learned Palo-alto Firewall in, let's say, 6 months, for Fortinet, you might only need a month because you already have that foundational knowledge, you already have that conceptual information and the knowledge. Okay, that's what I meant when I said that it's easy for you to transition between vendors if you learn or if you start learning with one firewall, let's say, for example, at least.
Yeah, got it.
Make sense?
Arun, yeah, I got it. Just I have one questions because just I'm counseling from your King's networking. So there are a combo package into it like Palo Alto load balancing and Fortinet. Just I want to do Fortinet, but the as per your discussion if we get that Palo Alto, so you can easily, if you better understand concept of this any firewall, so you can get easily or simply way to connect with any other vendors. So my question is that what should I do if I go for combo or just I will connect with Palo Alto only.
I mean, if you're getting the combo, then my recommendation is to go with that. Okay, because again, when you would learn Palo, and then you would also have someone like myself doing end-to-end Fortinet as well. Okay, so some of the missing pieces, some of the missing gaps that you might have, for example, let's say the architecture is different. Okay, so in order to learn the architecture, you from a Fortinet perspective, you might need to go through documentation, some other resources, YouTube, etc., etc. Okay, rather when you are having a combo where you have two content to compare, so once you go through Palo and then you go into Fortinet, then you have a baseline set that okay, Palo does things this way, right? Now I have a Fortinet expert. Okay, so then you would have a better understanding of both of those products. Okay, if you don't have an option for combo or anything, then you're basically better off than just doing Palo and then doing some self-study and everything for that. Okay. But if you have the option then for the combo, then yes, that is a much better option.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
Mahesh, I think you have some questions. You're messaging my teammates that you're not able to unmute. So can you check from your side because everybody can unmute? There is no issue from our side. Everybody can unmute, guys. Mahesh, you need to check from your end. There is no separate permission where I can mute or unmute somebody. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anyone else with any questions?
Arun, are you Tamil?
I'm sorry?
Tamila?
No.
Okay, okay, yes.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I think we'll end it here and then I'll see you guys starting next week, Tuesday. Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yes, correct.
All right then. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Have
thank
a
you, sir.
good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, bye.
Ora.
Hi guys. Hi guys.
Yeah, hi, Madhav.